Hello everyone. This story is entitled The Night When Kuyang Came Down from the Sky. The Bengaris Forest, deep in the heart of East Kalimantan, was known both for its breathtaking beauty and the terrifying legends whispered by generations. Locals rarely entered it after sunset, especially on nights when the moon refused to shine. But for Laras, a curious anthropology student from Jakarta, tales of the supernatural only fueled her determination. She had spent the past 3 days in the home of the tribal elder in Parang Maradas village, a remote settlement nestled at the forest's edge. Her research focused on the myths surrounding female spirits in indigenous culture. That night, she insisted on joining two villagers, Pact and Dodi, as they made their way to a hut in the middle of a field to guard the harvest. "Are you sure you want to come, Laras?" asked Pact as he lit a kerosene lamp. "Tonight is Thursday wage. People here avoid going out unless it's urgent. I just want to experience the forest at night," Laras replied, strapping her backpack. "Maybe I'll get to hear some stories firsthand." The walk took them nearly an hour through the dark jungle. Insects buzzed, and a small stream babbled nearby. Then, suddenly, Laras froze. "Did you hear that?" she whispered. They all fell silent. A baby's cry, soft, distant, but piercing, echoed from somewhere deep in the trees. The sound chilled Laras to the bone, but there were no homes in that direction. No one lived out there. Dodi's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't respond, Miss Laras. That's not a real baby." Pact bowed his head, quietly reciting a prayer. His face grew grim. "That's the Kuyang," he murmured. "She's hunting, looking for newborns or pregnant women." Lara's stomach turned. She had read about the Kuyang, a ghostly creature, a woman's flying head with dangling organs, thirsty for the blood of infants and mothers, but she never imagined she'd hear one. "Move. Now, don't look back," Pact ordered, but the crying grew louder, closer. The sound clawed into Lara's mind. A faint red glow began to pulse in the trees, moving slowly like a floating ember. "Mrs. What is that?" she stammered. Mrs. Darlin grabbed her wrist tightly. "It's her. It's the Kuyang. Don't let her sense you." They ran toward the hut, the glow behind them growing brighter. Then the crying stopped. The forest fell into a terrifying silence. No wind, no insects, nothing. And then from the black sky, something descended. It glowed faintly red, like a dying flame drifting in the air. Laras looked up, and what she saw froze her blood. A woman's head, hair long and wild, face twisted with hunger, floated downward. Her internal organs dangled beneath her, dripping, glowing faintly. Her eyes glowed red as they searched the earth below. Laras wanted to scream, but her voice was locked inside her chest. The floating head was no illusion. It hovered just meters above the trees, a severed woman's head, hair tangled like dead vines, her entrails swaying and dripping with thick, dark blood. Her glowing red eyes scanned the forest floor, moving erratically like a predator sniffing prey. Mrs. Darlin pulled Laras down behind a large tree trunk and held a finger to her lips. Laras clutched her mouth. She could barely breathe. Her heart pounded so hard it felt like it might give her away. The red glow flickered again. Moving closer, the Kuyang hovered silently, like death floating on smoke. Dodi crouched beside them, slowly poured a bottle of old coconut oil mixed with lime and salt onto the ground, murmuring prayers. "It masks our scent," he said. "Just hold still." But then Laras's phone buzzed. A vibration, just a single, short hum in her pocket, and the Kuyang snapped her head toward their hiding spot. The three froze. The floating head dipped lower, lower, weaving between tree branches like a ghostly serpent. Her eyes locked onto the base of the tree. A long, wet slurping sound echoed in the silence. Suddenly, Mrs. Darlin flung a handful of ashes into the air, creating a cloud between them and the creature. "Run." They sprinted toward the hut barely 100 meters away. but in the darkness and panic, everything looked the same. Branches clawed at Laras's arms. Roots threatened to trip her. Behind them, a shrill scream pierced the night. Not human, not animal. It was the sound of a creature denied its prey as they burst through the wooden door of the small field hut. Dodie slammed it shut and bolted it with a thick wooden beam. Heavy breathing, sweat, silence. The lamp inside flickered as they all sank to the floor. Is it over? Laras gasped. No, said Mrs. Darlan gravely. She knows you're here now. She looked directly at Laras. You're young, healthy. She can smell the blood in your veins. Laras's hands trembled. Outside, the crying baby sound returned, this time louder, clearer, and circling the hut. And then they heard it. Not on the ground, but on the roof. Something wet, something breathing. The three of them sat in frozen silence. Above their heads, the wooden roof creaked slow, deliberate, followed by the sound of something wet dragging across the shingles. The baby's cry had stopped, replaced by a grotesque sniffing, like a beast trying to locate prey just beneath its feet. Mrs. Darlan whispered a verse under her breath while clutching a bundle of woven pandan leaves tied with red string. She's circling, she murmured. She's confused, not sure if we're inside, but she's close. Suddenly, a scratching sound echoed from the rooftop, fingernails or claws scraping the wood. Then a soft tap, 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 like something gently knocking. Laras's hands trembled in her lap. Her throat burned with held-back breath. She could hear every beat of her heart, pounding in her ears. Thud, a sudden loud weight dropped onto one side of the roof. Dust fell from the ceiling. Dodie stood, reaching for the bamboo spear leaning against the wall. If she breaks in, head for the trapdoor under the mat. He said, there's a crawl space. Go in and stay silent. But what about you? Laras whispered. I'll buy you time. Before anyone could speak again, the kerosene lamp inside the hut flickered violently, then died, plunging them into darkness. Something moved fast above them, now dragging across to the other side of the roof. Then, a long, high-pitched scream, the same scream from earlier, cut through the silence. But it wasn't outside. It came from inside the walls. Mrs. Darlan rushed forward, grabbed Laras's arm, and yanked the mat off the floor, revealing a small wooden trapdoor. Now, girl, inside. Laras dropped down into the darkness. The tight crawlspace cold and damp. She lay flat, surrounded by earth and roots. Mrs. Darlan followed and pulled the door shut just as, crash. The roof exploded inward above them. Wood shattered. A blast of air filled the room above. From beneath the floorboards, Laras saw shadows swirling and heard the sound of wet organs smacking against the floor. A gurgling noise, something like a woman trying to breathe through blood. Then, a voice. I know you're here. The Kuyang was inside. Laras held her breath. Above her, the sounds were unbearable, a slithering mass of flesh. Something heavy dragging across broken floorboards. The Kuyang was inside the hut now. Its unnatural voice still echoed through the shattered room. I know you're her. Beside her in the crawl space, Mrs. Darlan clutched a bundle of dried betel leaves, pressing them to her chest while whispering ancient mantras through clenched teeth. Laras tried to stay completely still, but every creak of the wood above made her bones ache with terror. They could hear Dodie's voice, a sharp chant in Banyar tongue. He had stayed behind to fight, but then a scream. Short, sudden, cut off like a knife through silence. Laras's hands flew to her mouth. Mrs. Darlan's eyes widened, but she didn't stop praying. Her voice grew louder, more desperate, from the floorboards. Dust and splinters fell with every thud above them. The thing was still moving, dragging something or someone. Then a drop of blood landed on Laras's cheek. She stifled a sob. It was fresh. The air in the crawl space grew colder. The damp earth smelled metallic and heavy, like a tomb. Then they heard it, a low breathing sound. Directly beneath them, Laras realized in horror, The Kuyang wasn't just above them. It was moving through the soil, scratching, burrowing, digging toward them. Mrs. Darlin quickly untied a small cloth from her waist and thrust it into Laras's hands. Inside were shards of mirror, bits of turmeric, and a drop of something thick and black. "When I say run, you run," she whispered. "Head for the river. Don't look back. If she catches me, don't stop." Laras shook her head. "No, I can't leave you. You must. She's hunting you, not me." Suddenly, a crack split the ground beside them. Fingers, long, sharp, clawed fingers burst through the dirt, blindly groping, twitching, reaching. "Run," Mrs. Darlin shouted. Laras burst through the crawlspace exit behind the hut and ran like death was behind her. Trees blurred past. Her breath tore through her throat. Behind her, she heard another scream this time. It was Mrs. Darlin's voice, and it sounded like it was being ripped from her soul. Behind her, she heard another scream this time. It was Mrs. Darlin's voice, and it sounded like it was being ripped from her soul. Laras didn't look back, but the forest did. Every shadow, every tree, every whisper in the wind knew that the Kuyang was chasing her now. Laras ran until her legs gave out. She collapsed by the edge of a blackened stream water, so still it mirrored the moonless sky. Her lungs burned, her heart pounded, but behind her, only silence. No cries, no claws, no whispers in the trees, just the sound of her ragged breath and the quiet croaking of distant frogs. She crawled to the water's edge, cupped her hands, and splashed her face. The cold stung her skin. Her fingers trembled as she reached for the bundle Mrs. Darlin had given her, still clutched tightly in her fist. She opened it. Inside were the mirror shards, the turmeric, and a thick drop of something dark. Dried blood, human, but not hers. Suddenly, a wind stirred the forest. The trees seemed to shiver. Laras looked down into the water and saw a face behind her reflection, a woman's face smiling, hair floating, eyes glowing. She spun around, nothing, but a whisper drifted on the wind. "You're marked now." Laras stumbled back. Her chest ached with fear. She noticed her neck felt hot. She looked down at her collarbone and saw it, a burn mark in the shape of an open mouth, right above her heart. She didn't remember being touched, didn't remember any pain, but she had been marked. She looked around desperately. She needed help. She needed someone who understood. And then she remembered Mac Arrow, the old blind woman in the village, the one the locals feared as much as they respected, a spiritual keeper of ancient secrets. Laras gathered her strength and began walking through the forest, using the stars to find her way. Hours passed. At dawn, she reached the outskirts of Parang Maratas. Villagers stared as she stumbled into the village square, blood on her shirt, her eyes hollow. An elder ran to her, shouting for help, but Laras collapsed before she could speak. Darkness swallowed her again, and in her final moment of consciousness, she heard a voice, Mac Arrow's voice from somewhere unseen. "You brought her here, didn't you? The one who have allies without legs. She won't leave until she finishes the bloodline." Laras awoke in darkness. The room smelled of burnt incense and damp earth. Faint candlelight flickered on the thatched walls. Her body ached. Her throat was dry, but when she tried to move, she realized she couldn't. Something was wrapped around her wrists and ankles, strings of woven hair and chicken feathers, tied tightly to the floor mat. Then a whisper came from the shadows. "Don't move, girl, not until I cleanse your blood." From the dim corner of the hut, Mac Arrow stepped forward, blind eyes milky white, but glowing in the candle's reflection. Her skin was wrinkled like old bark, and around her neck hung a pouch made from a baby goat's hide. "You've been touched by her," the old woman said. "The Kuyang doesn't mark people unless she's chosen one of them, or unless they carry part of her." Laras blinked. "What do you mean?" Mac Arrow poured a thick, black liquid into a wooden bowl and placed it by Laras's head. It steamed, smelling of herbs and blood. "You come from a bloodline she once tried to claim generations ago. Your great-grandmother betrayed a pact A midwife turned away from the dark arts escape before her initiation was complete. Mac Arrow crouched closer. That blood still runs in you. Laras shook her head. No, I didn't choose any of this. Mac Arrow smiled grimly. Blood doesn't wait for your choice. Suddenly, the candles flickered violently. A chill swept through the hut. Then a scream from outside. High, piercing, terrifying. Mac Arrow's expression hardened. She's here. She followed the mark. I told them to put sigils on the doors. But she's older than most protections. She can fly above them. A distant sound of flapping wings echoed over the rooftops. Then, thud. Something landed on the thatched roof. Something landed on the thatched roof. Dust rained down. Mac Arrow moved swiftly. She sliced her palm and let her blood drip onto the floor, drawing a protective circle around Laras. If she touches you now, your soul will burn. You must stay inside this circle. Laras nodded, heart racing. Then, crack. The roof split open, and the Kuyang dropped into the room. Entrails swinging, face twisted in hunger, her jaw stretched unnaturally wide, teeth gleaming like broken glass. She hissed, locking eyes with Laras. My blood, return it to me. But the circle began to glow. Kuyang screamed in fury, writhing like smoke caught in wind. Unable to pass the boundary, Mac Arrow raised a talisman. I bind you by the name of your unspoken pact, by the child you devoured and the womb you cursed be sealed again. A blast of heat filled the hut. The Kuyang shrieked and vanished into black smoke. Silence. Only Laras's gasps and the faint crackle of the candle remained. Mac Arrow collapsed to her knees. This isn't over, she said, breathless. She's not just feeding, she's searching. For what? Laras asked. Mac Arrow looked at her gravely. For her unfinished child, and it may be you. The air in Mac Arrow's hut was thick with smoke and silence. Laras sat trembling inside the protective circle, the glow now fading to a dim shimmer. Unfinished child? Laras asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You think I'm her child? Mac Arrow, still kneeling, shook her head. Not you, at least. Not fully, but someone close. Someone who carries her blood and her curse. She reached into her pouch and pulled out a folded, age-worn cloth, etched with a strange diagram, a tree with bleeding roots. This was your great-grandmother's mark, Mac Arrow said. She was supposed to be initiated into the sisterhood of flying wombs, but she escaped before her transformation. She was pregnant. Her child, your grandmother, was born clean, or so we thought. Mac Arrow pointed at the tree's roots. But curses aren't always direct. Sometimes they skip branch and bloom later. Laras's mind reeled. So what does the Kuyang want now? Mac Arrow's milky eyes seemed to pierce through time itself. She's trying to complete her rebirth, to return in full flesh. But she needs something to anchor herself in this world. A body, Laras whispered. Mac Arrow nodded. And not just any body, one tied to her original line. That's why she's marked you. But more than that, her voice darkened. There's a child, a soul the Kuyang tried to claim long ago, a fetus that was never born. Laras froze. She remembered stories from her mother of a miscarriage, a baby that never came, a pregnancy no one spoke of again. Could it be before she could ask more? A gust of wind slammed the hut's wooden door open. The candles blew out, and a voice low and inhuman slithered through the air. Arrow, you meddled again. Mac Arrow stood, clutching her talisman. You can't pass the salt line. Seti, she spat. Not in this form. The Kuyang's voice laughed a sickening, with rasp. I'm not here to fight. I've already fed. On the priest, Laras's heart stopped. The village priest, the only one who could bless the river. Mac Arrow's jaw tightened. You poisoned the water, didn't you? The Kuyang didn't answer. She didn't need to. Suddenly, screams echoed from the village outside. One after another panicked, gurgled. Then silent, Mac Arrow looked at Laras, her face pale. She's not hunting anymore. She's preparing. Laras stood unsteady but resolute. Then I need to find out what she really wants. If it's me, I'll face her. Mac Arrow grabbed her arm, not without understanding the full truth. You must see the place where it all began. Mac Arrow answered with a name that chilled her blood, the Forbidden Well of Situngal. Rain fell in soft drizzles as Laras and Mac Arrow pushed through the thick underbrush of the forest, deeper into the part villagers called Situngal, a name rarely spoken above a whisper. They were heading to a place wrapped in taboo, a site older than the village itself, the Forbidden Well. No one comes here, Mac Arrow muttered, her voice tight with memory. Not since the last breach. This is not just a well, it's a gate. The trees around them grew strangely twisted, their branches like fingers reaching downward. The silence was oppressive. Even the insects seemed to hold their breath. This is where your mother was nearly born, Mac Arrow said, but something tried to take her before she came into this world. That thing was banished, but not destroyed. Laras tightened her grip on the small cloth pouch Mac Arrow had given her, filled with salt, mirror dust, and ashes from the burned feathers of a black hen. Finally, they reached it. The well stood at the center of a stone clearing, surrounded by broken idols, overgrown vines, and the faint smell of rot. Its mouth was sealed by a rusted iron lid, inscribed with ancient carvings. Laras knelt beside it. Her skin crawled. The closer she got, the louder her heartbeat became until she heard another sound, a heartbeat that wasn't hers, but dumb, coming from inside the well. Mac Arrow laid her hand on the lid. The Kuyang was not born like others. She was created through ritual, and her essence was sealed down there after she failed to claim your grandmother's womb. Laras whispered, so she's trying again. Through me. Mac Arrow nodded gravely. You're the final key, the last of the line she marked. If she bonds with your blood, she'll return in full form, not as mist, not as shadow, but as flesh, a new birth. Suddenly, a crack. The lid shuddered. The markings glowed faint red. Laras stumbled back. From inside the well came a long, low groan like a woman in labor, but distorted, wet, inhuman. Then a voice echoed up from the depths. Laras. It wasn't Mac Arrow's voice. It wasn't even the Kuyang's whisper. It was her mother's. Help me. It's so cold down here. Laras's blood ran cold. That's not her. She's dead. She died last year. But the voice returned, pleading, desperate. Laras, my baby. I never told you the truth. Mac Arrow grabbed Laras's hand. Don't listen. That's how she tricks you. She mimics the dead to break the seal, but Laras was already crying, because deep down, she knew there was something her mother never told her, and whatever it was, waited in the well. Laras, my baby, help me, the voice echoed again, curling around Laras's mind like smoke, familiar, warm, but wrong. It held her mother's tone, her trembling affection, the same way she used to call her name before bedtime. But Mac Arrow gripped her wrist tightly. That is not your mother. It's a fragment, an echo twisted by the Kuyang. Laras's voice broke. But how does it know things only she would know? Mac Arrow looked away, her face shadowed, because some part of your mother was taken, not her body, but her grief, her silence. The lid of the well vibrated violently now. A thin crack spread across the center. Suddenly, a gust of wind shot up from the well, cold and foul, carrying the smell of afterbirth and blood. Then came a second voice, layered atop the first, deep, gurgling, ancient. The womb was mine. The child was stolen. Now I reclaim what was promised. Mac Arrow stumbled back. She's trying to break through fully. Laras's fingers moved to the pouch of ashes and salt. Her hand trembled. What do we do? Mac Arrow turned to her, eyes sharp. You must go down. What? She's not fully here yet, which means she's half bound in the underrealm, what we call Perut Bami. The only way to stop her is to cut the last tether before she completes the ritual. Laras stared at the cracked lid. You want me to enter the well? Mac Arrow handed her a mirror charm wrapped in red thread. This will show you her true form and protect your mind for a while. With no more time to argue, Laras nodded. Together, they removed the iron lid. A blast of rotting heat struck their faces. Inside the well, a spiral staircase carved into the stone and bone descended into darkness. "I'll be right here," Mac Arrow said, "but once you go in, she'll know. She'll see you." Laras climbed down, lantern in one hand, charm in the other. The air grew thick. The deeper she went, the walls began to pulse, as if alive. She heard whispers behind the stone, unborn voices crying for a mother that never came. Then, at the very bottom, she found it, a circle of flesh, like a nest, with umbilical cords dangling from above like vines in the center. A pale, translucent form, suspended in fluid, half human, half snake, its head facing away. Laras stepped closer, and the mirror charm began to glow. The creature twitched. Then it turned its head toward her, and she saw her own face, twisted, bloodless, eyes completely black. Then the real voice came. "I don't need to steal your body, Laras. You're always me." Laras stood frozen, face to face with the twisted creature suspended in the womb like chamber beneath the well. Its features were unmistakable. It wore her face, as if molded from her reflection, but corrupted. The black eyes blinked slowly, unnervingly human, yet completely soulless. "You're always me," it whispered again, voice like bones cracking underwater, born not from flesh, but from promise, from a debt. Laras clutched the mirror charm tight, and it burned red hot in her hand. The illusion flickered for a moment, revealing the creature's true form, a headless floating womb dripping with blood, sprouting wings made of wet, glistening organs, long intestines spiraled like tentacles, reaching toward her. She screamed and backed away, but the chamber responded, the walls pulsing, tightening like a living throat. The exit behind her began to seal. Above, faintly, she could hear Mac Arrow shouting, but the sound was distant, as though through a dream. "You can't run." The Kuyang hissed. "You are the vessel. I've always been inside you." Suddenly, visions surged into Laras's mind, memories not her own. Women crying during blood rituals, a child torn from its mother, a pact made in desperation by one of her ancestors. "Save my daughter, take me instead." But the deal was never paid in full. Laras dropped to her knees. "This ends with me." She reached for the red thread around the mirror and snapped it open, unleashing the full glare of the charm's light. The Kuyang screeched, its form writhing, melting, convulsing violently in the light. New, it wailed, "I am your mother, your blood, your curse." Laras shouted back, "Then I reject all of it." She hurled the mirror directly into the creature's core. A burst of searing white fire exploded across the chamber, lighting up every dark crevice of the underworld womb. The walls began to collapse, the umbilical vines snapped, the flesh melted into ash, and Laras fell into darkness. When she awoke, it was dawn. She was lying on the ground near the well, covered in soot and dried blood. The forest was quiet, eerily peaceful. Mac Arrow was kneeling beside her, eyes wet with relief. "It's over," she said gently. "You did it." Laras sat up slowly. The sky above was clear. No wind, no whispers, just silence, but something in her felt different, empty, perhaps, or free. She returned to the village with Mac Arrow that morning. The villagers, once skeptical, now looked at her with awe and quiet fear. They rebuilt the shrine by the river. The water cleared, the screams at night ceased, and the Kuyang was never seen again. Years later, Laras left the village and moved far away. She never married. She never had children. But sometimes, on nights when the moon is low and the wind howls just right, she swears she can still hear a faint voice calling from the trees, "My daughter, my body, my curse." And when she closes her eyes, she still sees the well, waiting. The story is over. Thank you for watching till the end.